Set intro video. Well, there you go. That's something interesting. So, welcome everybody to Talking Niagara this morning. And the headline news up here already is that Israel yesterday invaded southern Lebanon, targeting Hezbollah, so they say. But hey, and this is the same. This is the 98th Division, which was prominent in Gaza, is now attacking Hezbollah in in southern Lebanon. Yeah, this is nothing but the out and out invasion, is it?
It is. But first, I'd like to talk about that debate last night, if you don't mind.
Oh yeah, sure.
That vice president debate last night.
Yeah.
I think it was like extraordinarily interesting because I'm wondering why these two, the Vance and Walz, are not the president candidates rather than Kamala and Trump. When we saw the debate between Kamala and Trump just kept screwing up, and Kamala had nothing to say basically except platitudes and rehearsed statements. And her biggest tactic was just to irritate Trump so that he would go out, just lose it, and talk about dogs and cats and Viktor Orban and things of that kind. Last night's debate was a civilized debate. I learned more about last night about the positions of the Republicans and Democrats than anywhere else. You had two candidates that spoke well and spoke with dignity and were both more presidential times 10 than the two candidates that are running for president. I watched that, and finally we're getting a debate that's worth something to watch. I mean, Trump's and Kamala's was kind of entertaining. The one between Trump and Biden was rather sad.
I didn't watch it last night, have to say. Yeah. Mike says they were both only caught misleading once, and it was an abortion.
Yeah, and the big takeaway, though, the number one killer there was when Vance was asked whether or not Trump lost the election, and he couldn't answer it. He wouldn't answer it. And just a few days ago, we mentioned that here, that the Republicans, the reason why I find Republicans scary is that no Republican can admit that Trump lost the election. No, Vance would not take a position on it. He just started talking about the future. We got to look for the future.
Well, actually,
he did not once, when asked directly if Trump won or lost the election, he would not answer it because it's political suicide to answer it.
Yeah,
if he said no, he didn't. If he said no, he didn't win the he didn't lose the election, then he would be marked as a person election denial, and that would hurt him. If he said yes, he or no, or yes, he did lose the election, that would have been political suicide in his own party.
Yeah,
and that is that's the biggest takeaway with the Republicans now. If you try to admit that the election was lost by Trump, the Republicans are going to kill you for it. That's a mainstay of their whole operation. Even though it was mentioned by the people who were running the debate, they said 62 attempts at challenging the election, including the one in front of the Supreme Court, a Supreme Court that Trump had stacked, refused to or turned down any evidence that remotely suggested that Trump actually won and the election was flawed. And yet that is a mainstay of Republicans right now. Not one of them can admit that Trump lost because it would be political suicide.
Oh, yeah. Well, You can't. Vance is in that impossible situation. He probably knows he would agree privately that that Trump lost, but he can never say so in public. He's his job, his future job, if Trump wins, is as vice president. And therefore substitute president. He has to be on Trump's side in that regard, right? He could not. He can not never answer yes.
No, he can never answer no either. When he's he could do it if he wasn't running for politics.
Either way, yeah. He's got to talk about the future, and that's the only thing you can talk about in such a situation. It's just common sense. Doesn't matter what your political viewpoint is. Do not expect a member of that party to answer anything else. They will not.
No, they won't. If they're not up for election or something like that, then they can say there was always a problem with that election, and yet they reviewed it. They've done recount after recount after recount. Governors of every state, whether they're Republican or Democrat, determined whether or not Trump or Biden won, and turned in the results. And of course, we know what happened on January 6th.
Yeah,
and they demonized Vance for doing his job according to the Constitution. That's the biggest scare I find with Republicans. If they cannot admit a simple truth, if they cannot admit something that is overwhelmingly evident, and they cannot provide any evidence at all except a bunch of hearsay that the election was fixed or stolen, then when they get into government, what else are they not going to be able to admit? They're going to have to take their cues from Trump. If Trump says blue is red, then they're going to have to say blue is red. And they'll find a reason why blue is red.
Yeah. Yeah. And
if they wear a red and blue shirt, they'll say it's blue and red. That's the scariest thing I found. But the other takeaway I had of this is that Vance gave Trump a little bit of legitimacy here. It shows that his vice president conducts himself in a good form. He is a good debater. He is sophisticated. He doesn't run offline. He actually provides Trump with legitimacy that he didn't have before.
Yeah, and according to the Independent, Vance won that debate.
Because of Vance's objective was to make himself look a lot better. He's got a lot of bad press lately, and he didn't look too good in the headlines. After that debate, he looks much better. But actually, the real teller for me, as I said before, even though he conducted himself very well, answered the questions very well, when he was posed with that one question, did Trump win or did Trump lose the election? He wouldn't answer it, which he did not have the ability to speak the truth.
Yeah.
He was not allowed to speak the truth, and he didn't. And that, to me, is telling. You don't want the Republicans in the highest office if that's what they're going to do.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Anything else on the debate?
No, except that congratulations to both debaters. They acted civilized. They acted with the proper demeanor, which we expect from elected officials. They were just a much better watch than there was the other two debates.
And what? Yeah, go on.
Yeah, I was able to learn more about the Republican and Democrats' positions when I watched that. And of course, you take it with a grain of salt, each one of them being pro their own side. But I was able to, and I felt that Vance conducting himself well last night gave legitimacy to Trump. I think a lot. I mean, yeah, you have a feeling that Trump's first choice for vice president would have been Marjorie Taylor Greene, but somebody advised him, well, don't do that. Get Vance.
Okay, so and what we were talking about, Chris, was actually the VP debate last night.
Yes, it was the vice president debate.
Okay, and moving on to Israel invaded in southern Lebanon yesterday and targeting Hezbollah. So there was clear invasion, and this was done by the 98th Division that were deployed to the northern front from Gaza only 2 weeks ago. And they've been fighting in Gaza for as long as that's been going on. The Air Force and military supported ground troops in a limited, localized, and targeted raids against Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, and that posed immediate threat to Israeli communities in northern Israel. How many times have we heard this before? Wasn't this part of pretty well every border conflict that's involved Lebanon and Israel since the 1950s, even?
Well, yes. There's a couple of different takeaways here.
Names, of course, but you know what I mean.
They took their 98th Division, which is battle hardened right now. So the 98th Division is a battle hardened troops, and that's what you want. You want your best battle hardened troops for this particular operation because their instincts are good now in battle, particularly fighting insurgencies. So they put their best forces up there. They have just bombed the crap out of Lebanon, killed civilians willy-nilly, and they don't seem to be care. They killed 500 civilians in one day, which is the highest death toll even for Gaza for one day. They're moving in now. They even though the United States keeps saying, well, we don't like that, but let's be clear, Hezbollah is fighting not just Israel, they're fighting the United States. The United States is providing intelligence for Israel. It's providing all the weapons. When people from the Middle East say, when they say, oh, you were fighting Israel, no, we were fighting Israel in the United States. And they say, why is that? Because all those guns, all those bullets, all those bombs come from the United States. And they're giving it to them as many as they want, as much as they want, and the U.S. eyes in the sky are identifying the targets for the Israelis on the ground. Whether or not Hezbollah will be able to fight off Israel this time is questionable, as they did back in 2006, because they have pretty much decapitated most of the Hezbollah leadership already, including Nasrallah, their big guy, and all the other lower commanders under Nasrallah have already been decapitated as well. So there's a leadership problem among Hezbollah, how to organize, how to get themselves counterattacking, and so on. And the other question is, of course, when Israel goes into Lebanon, will they give it back? There's already
the answer to that is going to be an astounding no.
Yeah, there's already the first thing they did was they messaged everybody they could in southern Lebanon and told them to get out of there because they're coming.
Well, yeah, I was going to say that was what Amal al-Harani, the mayor of Jadeidet, Marjaran, which is a Christian majority Lebanese village less than 10 kilometers from the border, told Reuters that several locals had received calls, apparently from the Israeli army, telling them to get out of the area.
This is very much like the Nakba. They did the same thing when they ethnically cleansed Israel, when they told the Palestinians, 700,000 back then, to get out or you're going to get hurt. And they ran them out of what is Israel now. That's why we have so many Palestinian refugees all over the place. As a matter of fact, many of the Gazans, 70% of the Gazans that live there today are from people who were pushed out of their lands during the time of the Nakba.
Yeah.
And this is, so what they're doing basically is they're telling everybody to get out until the war is over. But once the war is over, they're not going to let them back in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course they're not. No, that's clear. And that's exactly the way that they've been acting in Gaza.
Yeah, they pushed everybody to the south, trying in Gaza, hoping that Israel or Egypt would open its borders and let the Palestinians come into the Sinai. But once they were there, they were never going to be let back in to the Gaza. That was part of the strategy. As a matter of fact, there's I've read things that said that they've tried to pay off the Egyptians before all this to take all the Palestinians. They offered them a huge amounts of money to take the Palestinians out of Gaza. So definitely, and Gaza is no more anyway. Gaza is just a heap of rubble.
I was just going to say that right now, the Israelis control 100% of the northern half of Gaza anyway.
Yeah, and they'll probably keep that and not let too many of the Palestinians back up there.
Yeah.
They've jammed them all into the south, into so-called safe zones, but the safe zones don't protect anybody if they want to bomb them. What the United States is allowing Israel to do is immoral, and I think they're in it as much as, like I said before, it just didn't make any sense that Israel just kept snubbing the Americans. Every time the Americans say they have a peace deal, Biden said we have a peace deal that the Israelis have agreed to. We just have to sort it out. When when the Hamas back in early July accepted the peace deal, that's when Netanyahu started adding more and more conditions so that the peace deal couldn't go ahead. And then the U.S. just accepts that. And it was their peace deal, and all of a sudden Israel changes it, and they accept that. I'm beginning to think that I just thought the U.S. was incompetent, but I think this is a good cop, bad cop. They're pretending they're seeking peace, but behind the doors, they're just happy what Israel's doing right now.
Yeah, they're basically exactly. For the Americans, it's a no-lose scenario.
Well, it's even better for the U.S. because it destabilizes the powers in the region, and I think the ultimate goal is the United States destabilized Iraq. It destabilized Iraq. It destabilized Libya and Syria. Syria used to be a military power of some note. It is not now. It is a country that is in constant conflict within itself. It'll never be a regional power for a very long time. Iraq was a regional power that got completely wiped out. Libya was a regional power that got sort of completely destabilized, and the only one that holds itself together as a firm, well-established military entity that is an enemy of the United States and Israel is Iran. I think the ultimate goal here, if they can pull it off, is to destabilize Iran in the same way.
But
Defuse it.
Again, at the moment, and there's another article on this we'll get to, and the US basically is saying, US is preparing to attack. Okay, so US is stating that Iran is preparing to attack. Damn you!
It did. Israel. The U.S. Warned everybody that Iran was going to attack Israel. They did. They bombed Israel with missiles. The difference here from the last time is that the Iranian missiles got through. The Iranians have a strategy to beat the Iron Dome. What they do is they throw up a lot of duds to sort of saturate the airspace, so the Iron Dome doesn't know which ones to pick. Jordan and the U.S. Navy also were the ones that were shooting down these missiles, and yet these missiles got through, and we don't know. Many of them got through. If you see the videos that don't come from mainstream media, but are put up by people who witnessed it on the ground, a lot of those big missiles got through. And we don't know the damage because Israel hasn't spoken of the damage yet. Well, they just said that no.
The other thing about this is that Israel's defense capabilities, Israel's shield, is supposed to take those missiles out. As soon as they become evident, they fire off their defensive mechanism, which is to take those missiles out over Iraq.
Some by the Iron Dome closer to home. And like I say, Jordan has capabilities of bringing down those missiles as well. They brought down 5 or 6 of them, maybe at least 4 anyway. Jordan, the U.S. Navy took down a dozen.
Well, Jordan needs to, because Jordan's in that firing line. If any of them fall short, they're falling on Jordan as well.
Yeah, Jordan is squeezed between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah.
It doesn't like what Israel is doing, but it is also afraid of its own sovereignty from the insurgents from Iran. So Iran is the boogeyman in the region.
Yeah, and those missiles are coming across both Jordan and Iraq. And Iraq is not in a state to actually protect itself right now.
Well, as a matter of fact, it has Shia militias there that launch rockets at Israel too.
Yeah. So this whole ballistic missile thing is actually, as you said, preparing for attack was the headline that we had on Monday, but in fact that's already happened yesterday.
Make no mistake, the Iranians targeted military targets. However, if they had targeted Tel Aviv, there would be hundreds dead today. And that's what I really worry about in this. If this thing escalates and Iran starts shooting a pile of its missiles back at Israel, it could do a whole lot of damage. So when Israel retaliates, they're going to retaliate, of course. They're going to have to make sure they don't kill too many people, that they attack military targets as well. Because once they give the excuse, if they start killing people like they have done in Gaza and in Lebanon, then that will give license for the Iranians to now start killing Israeli people, targeting residents, which is chilling, if you ask me. And another aspect of this is I don't know how Israel is going to go after Iran. I think they're going to try to decapitate the leadership again. If they can get to the Khomeini like they did Nasrallah, they'll do that. They will go after the generals and the higher ups in the party Iran is a country ripe for
But
leadership
again,
change right now, because the people of Iran are not too happy with their leadership. So I think Israel and the United States will try to topple the leadership in Iran, or at least destabilize it, so other
yeah,
forces in Iran could take
that
over.
that said, that is, I accept that that is likely to happen. One of the differences between Iran versus Israel and Hezbollah or Hamas fighting Israel is the fact that Iranians have actually got technical capabilities of their own, right? They build a lot of their, maybe copies, but they build a lot of their own missiles.
They also have the Russians helping them.
They do.
So the Russians have given them jets. They've also given them radar. They have also given them anti-aircraft capabilities. They're not nearly as good as the U.S. ones, but they are still pretty good, and they're
Yeah.
going to do some damage.
Oh yeah.
I have a feeling that Israel has pointed out that has tried to speak the Iranian people and saying your freedom is coming close. Get ready to be free, or something of those kinds of words, hinting that it's going to go after the Iranian leadership.
Mm. Yeah, well, this is upcoming. We shall see what will happen in the next while.
It's sickening right now. No one knows how close Iran is to having a nuclear bomb. We do. Israel has already said they'll use a nuke if they have to against Iran. Russia says it will use tactical nuclear weapons. We're looking at what is possibly the first nuclear war happening.
That would be
Japan, two cities
stupidity.
in Japan, yeah, two cities in Japan got destroyed by nuclear bombs in 1945. But in this particular case, the enemies have nuclear capabilities as well.
Yeah.
They're talking about getting a nuke from North Korea. Iran could get a nuke from North Korea. You're looking at terrible escalation here when nuclear weapons, tactical nuclear weapons, are considered. And also, the Israelis have Israelis defense teams have a underground compound similar to what Nasrallah had in Beirut, or in the suburbs of Beirut, and they have one just like that a little north of Jerusalem. Its location is probably well known to the Iranians. If they have the capability of bombing that, they might do that as well. I have a feeling that the power stations are going to be targeted. The Israelis could just totally destroy Iranians' oil production when that's the source of their wealth. So that's another possible target. I think they're going to try to go after the generals and probably their oil capabilities.
And Israel has already said that Iran will pay for launching a major missile strike against it.
Yeah, but the problem here is Iran's missiles got through the Iron Dome, and if they got through that time, if they have if Israel strikes back, this is supposed to be payback for all the strikes that Israel has done against Iran, and Iran has not reciprocated up until now. But as far as the Iran score sheets goes, Israel 5, Iran 1, basically, they have to catch up. So if Israel hits them, they're going to hit back, so on and so forth. I don't see this. I think the people in the region are going to be terrorized. I think they're going to be brutally murdered by bombs coming out of the sky. I don't see anything good at all here. I mean, no one's listened to anyone. Not even Pope Francis can talk to Biden, who is a Catholic, and stop him from doing what he's doing.
Mm. All right. Let's move. Let's okay, we got comments. Mike, for Israel to have such good inside information, it must have people inside Iran that are against them.
Yeah, that's true.
And US, and in part US intelligence. US have been looking at Iran for years. The biggest threat to America is, and the West is perceived as Iran.
Yeah, there is a group of resistance fighters in resistance groups inside Iran that have been against the Ayatollah and the regime for a very long time, and presumably they work with Israel in the United States. I mean, Israel has been able to assassinate nuclear scientists. They've been able to assassinate at will, basically, in Tehran or other places in Iran. So they do have people on the ground there. They have a extraordinary spy network, I guess, and but they also have the U.S. eyes in the sky. So
yeah,
Israel has all the weapons, all the most sophisticated weapons, all the most sophisticated everything. The one thing they don't have, they have a Jericho missile apparently, which is a really good ballistic missile, but it's not hypersonic. So I imagine the United States will start lending them hypersonic missiles if they need them.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a dangerous time. It's a dangerous time, and I think that the United States and Israel and the West are sacrificing the people in the region. I think they think if we do all this now, then it will be over with, and 10 years from now, everybody will forget about it, like we tend to do in the West. We always like to forget. We forget about the bad things that we do in the West.
Yeah.
This is going to have consequences for many, many years after. But I think the objective of the United States and Israel is to continue this war until they destabilize Iran and wipe out Hezbollah and Hamas, no matter how many innocents it takes, how many innocent bodies it takes. It's something like Iraq. There were hundreds of thousands of innocents died in Iraq during the wars they had there, particularly the one they went in for the weapons of mass destruction that they never found. Yeah, they toppled a brutal regime by Saddam Hussein, but then they caused enormous amounts of problems, and the wars and small wars continued on, and hundreds of thousands of people died. And I'm afraid this is going to happen now. Look at tens of thousands of people have died in Gaza. In 2006, Hamas was elected by 44% of the electorate of Gaza as to be the governing body in Gaza. So they only got 44% of the vote, but that was enough for them to win, Hamas to win. One half of the people that live in Gaza were not alive when that happened. They never have had a chance to vote against Hamas. Over about 75% of the people who are living in Gaza now were not old enough to vote. If they were, I mean, if you take the remaining people that were alive when Hamas won the election in 2006, you're looking at 75% of the people there couldn't cast a vote at the time, and yet they are blamed collectively for voting in Hamas back in 2006. So they deserve what they get. This just really doesn't make any sense.
All right. Okay, so coming back home. First thing, Niagara Region Compost giveaway. So there's at the McBain Centre on Montrose Road between 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. and Saturday 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. between now and Saturday. Niagara region is giving away compost to 320-litre bags of compost with a cash or food donation in support of local charities.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, that's a good thing if anyone needs compost.
No,
keep that one in mind.
I just wanted to point that one out to everybody. So if you need compost, there you go. Right, you can get 3 bags maximum, but you've got to bring non-perishable food or a cash donation with you.
Yes. So if you need compost, you can bring your donation. I think it's a good thing. It's good for the citizens, and it's good for the people who need compost, obviously, and it's also good for the city to collect the money for charitable reasons. What were charities it going to go to? Just local charities.
Just local charities. Just local charities. I'm presuming like the soup kitchens and the like.
There you go.
Yeah. They weren't specific about that, and Laurie wasn't specific about it either. Put the link in down on the comments. All right. So if you want to do that, do it. Okay. Let's move on. Here's one I'm in total agreement with Mr. Law on. John Law, who's a local reporter from he used to be from the Standard, from the Niagara Dailies, says Niagara Falls has no excuse for letting its New Year's Eve concerts die. 100% agree. Let's get them back going again. People want to know what the heck has happened to them.
Yeah. Basically, the nail in the coffin for New Year's Eve was the COVID times. Nobody's been able to get their stuff back together after COVID. Yeah. The main problem was it was already dying before that. That nobody wanted to pay for it. The hotel said they're already full up on New Year's Eve anyway, so they don't need any more attractions.
Yeah, but
John Law points out that this was something free for the people of Niagara Falls. Anybody else that came into town at the time could obviously enjoy them too, but this was something free. And he points it out in a city that tries to squeeze every last dollar out of you as a tourist. This was something free. It's a complete anomaly.
Anomaly.
Yeah. So this was something free, and it mostly benefited the citizens of Niagara Falls. And we can't get any kind of enthusiasm. Remember, they've had people like Alanis Morissette on here.
They've had the best bands, some of the best bands in the world on here. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say, and I've been down there a couple of times myself. When I went down there, of course, I had my kids and stuff, and it was pretty hard to slosh around in the mud and watch the kids while I got them on my shoulders and that. But nevertheless, it was a pretty good thing. It's free. It's absolutely free. And I think that this is a nod to Niagara Falls, and he's got a good point. This was for the people of Niagara Falls, and it was something to celebrate the people of Niagara Falls as they move into the next year. It was a very positive thing to do. Is something that the city of Niagara Falls give back to its citizens, using, of course, the money they got from the tourist industry there.
Well, apparently
okay.
I was going to say, apparently this all started with 60s pop star Bobby Cortola, who was the headliner in 91. And the following year, Glass Tiger was there with some unknown singer named Alanis Morissette.
You've had Tom Cochrane, Blue Radio, Great Big Sea. They've had all these. Now, another thing that sort of put a damper on it was Global TV decided it wasn't going to broadcast it anymore. Even though they've had people like Brian Adams.
Brian Adams was the headlining on the, I think, the last show that was put up there, the New Year's Eve show 19. We haven't had a New Year's Eve show since 2019 when Brian Adams headlined this, right? So Brian Adams was the last show in 2019. And since then, 2020 was not to do with COVID, but 2020 almost gets bundled in with COVID. And the problem was the spat between the city and Global TV.
Now it points out that in 2014, the show headlined by Keith Urban drew a huge crowd and had 4 million viewers watching at home, but it cost $3 million to produce. Because of the price tag, Global opted not to televise the concert the next year, a bewildering decision on its part, considering the plugs and promos it filled the broadcast with. I don't know.
Well, it used to be big money. It used to be, even if I was not going there, the point being is I'd watch that concerts often on TV.
Yeah, I did too, kind of, and
particularly in the last hour before the new year, you'd switch it over to Global. You'd watch the Niagara Falls concert, and that was big money television for Global.
Well, evidently they didn't think it was worth it because it cost them $3 million, and they decided they're not going to do it anymore. And yet the next few concerts were untelevised, but they still a big success here in town. I think we're just getting too digital. I think, you know what I mean? Somebody's saying, what are the pluses and what are the negatives? If we don't, if the dollar signs aren't there, or if I don't know, nobody is factoring in the happiness it brings to people from Niagara Falls. Nobody's put that into the equation. They're looking at the dollar ledger up or down, and they're saying, okay, well, our hotels are already full anyway. We don't need it anymore. Nobody is saying, well, what about the people of Niagara Falls who like it?
Why doesn't this $1 million come off, $1 million or whatever it costs for the thing, come off of the from the municipal accommodation tax?
Good point. And nobody knows what happens to that municipal accommodation tax.
No, municipal accommodation tax. Let's be very, very clear about this. The municipal accommodation tax is used for marketing the city. That's what it's supposed to be used for. That's how it's written into law, right? Part of putting on a concert like this is marketing the city. Yes, it's good for local people, but it's part of marketing the city. It's a marketing event.
Well, nobody has asked for the ledger sheet on the tax. That's always been a problem with this tax.
And the problem here is
where is the money? Who show the public where this money's coming from?
Yeah,
it's a tax. Nobody. It's all sort of hush hush. Nobody knows exactly how much they got in. Nobody knows exactly where it's being spent. There is no auditor general that tells us what's going on there.
Yeah. We need absolutely, we need transparency about the tax, but that's where this money will come from.
Supposedly.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good deal, but I have a feeling that a lot of that tourist tax just kind of filters right back into the hands that collected it, and because there is no accountability, there's no open accountability on that. And it's always been.
I agree with you.
Anytime it comes up, nobody pursues it.
Yep, I agree with you. Accountability,
including the Ontario government under Wynne, when asked when Gwynn was in power, when Gwynn was in power and asked about that, basically all they said is you don't have to pay it if you don't want to, but and because we don't administer the tax, we don't have anything to do with the tax, but we permit it to happen. And legally, you do not have to pay it. But it's a hard argument for anybody there saying I don't have to pay this. And they always say you do. It's the law. You have to pay it.
You do have to pay it. Sorry, no. Let's be very clear. The municipal accommodation tax was actually introduced in the very last year of the Wynne government. There is no option but to pay it. There's supposed to be $2 per bed that's actually occupied per day. Right, it's supposed to go in municipal accommodation tax. It's supposed to be collected by the firm, and it's supposed to go, by the firm who's doing the bookings, etc. And it's supposed to go directly to the marketing, a marketing body, a body that is marketing that city and that tourism in that city. So all of the municipal accommodation tax comes to Tourism Niagara in the city, and that is where the problem lies, because there is no accountability of Tourism Niagara.
Yeah, I thought it was if you turned it down, you didn't have to pay it, whether it's in a restaurant or anything else.
It's the resort taxes. It's the resort taxes in the city of that are operated by some operators in the city of Niagara Falls that are illegal.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Well, that's always been a mystery, and I know we don't have to pay them if we live in town. If we live in town, we don't have to pay them. But
yeah. Oh yeah.
Anyway, the accountability is the big thing there. Nobody seems to know how much money, or who's collecting it, what the accountability is for that. Do the records match? It's rife for corruption. And,
the resort tax has always been rife for corruption. It's not going to anybody but the operators. There is not been, it is supposed to have been paying for Tourism Niagara, but it realistically doesn't go anywhere but the operators.
Yeah. Anyway, that's another factor in it. It's a good idea that you had there that money collected should go towards something like that. But yeah,
pay for the concert.
I think there's a real change in attitude that the human element of all decisions are being removed. Like you look at the country of Bhutan, right? And the country of Bhutan, with the help of Canadian, by the way, came up with the idea of the gross national happiness.
Yep.
Every country, when the leader of Bhutan was asked, when people started talking about the gross domestic product of Bhutan, that little country, the leader of that country says, well, what about the gross domestic happiness, basically? How are people happy? Are people happy? And they didn't know how to respond to this. There was a Canadian involved in that. So what they did, how do we improve the gross domestic happiness of our people? So what they did, they decided to make a great big effort into educating people, taking care of them health-wise, making sure they had enough food as a priority of their government, and then look at the after effects of the economy. We should do the same thing. We need a gross domestic happiness guide, and we can have a little one for Niagara Falls. Are you happy? This will make people in Niagara Falls happy. That should be one of our goals, is to improve the attitude of the average Niagaran, to make the average Niagaran happy about being here. There is human need here. It's just not dollars and cents.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. All right. And I think we're broadly in agreement with John Law about the need for the return of the concert.
That's right, Johnny baby.
So thank you for highlighting that, John. And
well, we can have a new group.
Chris,
Johnny and the journalists.
Johnny Law and the journalists. Yes, there were a couple of really cold New Year's Eve just before COVID. Says Chris Simone, and the goal is meaning not happy.
Can you describe that a little bit better? It's a kind of that's a Byzantine statement. It's hard to decipher. The goal is not happy. The goal should be happy. I think Chris was trying to say the ultimate the considerations is not for happy. I think he can confirm that if he wishes.
Okay. All right. So basically, Julian Assange pleaded guilty. He says he pleaded guilty to journalism. So he was speaking recently at the European Union and about his ordeal.
Julian Assange definitely he was a journalist that went one step too far. He revealed to the world what was behind the scenes of decisions that the all countries, not just the U.S., not just the Western countries, but Russia and China and anyone else that he came across during the WikiLeaks. He is the one that exposed the United States for lying about the massacre in Baghdad when the U.S. Army in attack helicopters murdered a bunch of people that were joining journalists to do a story in Baghdad. They all collected together. They had a couple of guns with them, but they were the bodyguards of Reuters actually, and they massacred them plus other people that came onto the scene, including a father driving his van who stopped to help an injured person on the side of the road, and he was blown to bits too. When the army was told about this, they told Reuters that their people got into a crossfire between insurgents and the U.S. Army, and it was a complete lie. That is one of the most glaring things that Assange did, and that's unforgivable. To tell the truth about something that the U.S. had lied about and tried to cover up, that is unforgivable. And other things that the United States had done behind the scenes that were highly unethical. And that's not just the United States, it was other countries as well. This was unforgivable. So he spent 5 years in a British prison. Before that, 7 years hiding in the or being protected inside the Ecuadorian embassy in London. And they finally give him a plea deal because it didn't look good for the United States. They looked like they were going to be vindictive. They looked like they were going to do what they did to what was that guy Manning? Now a guy Chelsea Manning. He calls himself, or she calls himself now, a trans person. They put Chelsea Manning in.
You can't get through on the pronoun, can you?
Yes, I just don't know where to go with it. But he says, I pled guilty to seeking information from a source. I pled guilty to obtaining information from a source, and I pled guilty to informing the public what that information was. I did not plead guilty to anything else. Now, the conditions he has to be very careful because they put strict conditions on this. He says, I was formally convicted by a foreign power for asking for, receiving, and publishing truthful information about that power while I was in Europe. The fundamental issue is simple. Journalists should not be prosecuted for doing their jobs. Journalism is not a crime. It is a pillar of the free, informed society. And that is the truth. However, we have freedom of press. We only have freedom of press as long as the powers decide that how free you're going to be with that. If you're the United States is not as bad as China, but it does exactly what China would do when things get a little bit too embarrassing for them.
Yeah. And Assange was speaking before the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe in Strasbourg yesterday.
He also said, this is very telling too, if I can get it, it was Assange was released in June to pled guilty to a single felony charge, and then he was sort of allowed to go back to Australia. And then he talks about he being locked up for 5 years in a dungeon. Basically, they treated him terribly, put him in isolation, as they did with Chelsea Manning for 3 years. Before his deal with the U.S. Justice Department, the Australian had facing 18 charges related to the organization, dissemination of classified material. Assange told lawmakers, justice for me is now precluded. So he won't really get justice. He got a bit of a break. And I want to get to the point. However, he did not stop a number of times to clear his throat and apologize. Assange said that he's still coming to terms with his freedom. He finds real life kind of spooky right now. He has trouble adjusting to be an ordinary father and husband. And there is part of this deal where he cannot. I'm trying to find the part where it says before his deal with that dissemination class. He says here, told lawmakers, justice for me is now precluded as the U.S. government insisted in writing into its plea agreement that I cannot file a case at the European Court of Human Rights or even a Freedom of Information request over what I did to be as a result of the extradition request. In other words, you can be free, but you cannot exercise the normal rights that other people have. You cannot go to the European Court of Human Rights to find out what we did to you. And you cannot file for a Freedom of Information request to find out what we did to you and the things we have done. So basically, he had to make a deal with the devil to have some freedom. I celebrate the fact that he's a free man now, but I have worries about Assange being able to adjust to normal life. He's never had a normal life for a very long time. I think he's very much troubled with the deal that he had to sign.
This was 12 years, isn't it?
Yeah, he was 12 years, 7, and then he got yanked out of the Ecuadorian embassy by force, put in prison. And like I said, Chelsea Manning was left in a solitary confinement for 1,100 days in a little room, allowed to come out 1 hour every day. You can imagine what that does to your mind.
Yeah.
And they did the same thing to Assange. And when they had hearings with Assange, they put him in a glass box. And when they asked him questions, they couldn't hear him. So he had to kneel down to the vent on the floor and speak out the vent. And this was in court.
Yeah.
His father and his brothers said in any other situation, it would have been so bizarre, it would have been funny. But when you have your defendant inside a glass box, sitting in a chair, and when asked a question, he can't answer it until he gets down on his knees and talks through the air vent. That's the kind of thing you had to go through.
Well, that seems weird, because why would you do that when in fact you could mic up that entire room? It would be
There
more
was all
desirable to mic it up than to do that.
there was all kinds of efforts to humiliate him and make him make life difficult for him. And I celebrate the Australian government for pushing for his release. Luckily for him, he came from a country that was a democratic country and couldn't see the justice of what was happening to Assange, but knew that they were playing with a very, very powerful country like the United States. But the United States needs the cooperation of Australia a lot, particularly now when China is on the rise. So I think, in deference to that allegiance with the Australians, that the United States decided to make this deal. I think if Assange had come from any other country that wasn't important in the sphere of U.S. in U.S. sphere, if it came from Malaysia or if it came from Sri Lanka or somewhere else, I think he would still be rotting in jail today.
Yeah. Okay. So moving on, an NDP MP has put forward a private member's bill that seeks to criminalize residential school denialism. I thought,
this is scary. This is
yeah,
very, very scary.
I'm thinking, what? People are denying this happened? But I suppose it's true.
This is well, yeah. Of course, you're going to get people denying it.
Of course, yeah.
But you got to be really afraid of what you're going to say if that comes through. Yesterday, I think it was yesterday, I pointed out that no bodies have been found in all the suspected graves. The mass graves they were talking about haven't come up, haven't turned up a body yet. All these supposed graves that caused riots and stuff. Even the Catholic Church, who was the Pope Francis, came to apologize about the residential schools, but it turns out he doesn't have to apologize for people who are young children who had died and got forgotten and thrown into a hole and not registered. These kind of things didn't happen. But if I were to say that, I might be accused of anti-residential school denialism. This is censorship. It's not even illegal to deny the Holocaust in Canada, I don't think. But I'm not quite sure about that. But you can deny anything. You can find a reason why anything. There's a person that would disagree with you on just about everything you want. This is authoritarian style of censorship to say that the residential schools didn't happen. Obviously they did, but somebody may have an opinion that it didn't, and they want that to be a criminal offense.
Well, that is a tough thing to do because yeah, I would say you can't make any such thing. You see, can't be. The questions about denialism of denying history can't be ever made a criminal offense. It's an educational thing. You know, for example, I remember when I was a lot younger, this person who denied the Holocaust denier, what's his name? Irving.
There's a few of them. There's one here in Canada too. I can't remember his name.
Yeah. And the issue being that obviously they have a right to their opinion about what happened. But the question is how much of that should they be allowed to publish? Well, clearly, again, with publication rules the way they are in the West, they're allowed to publish all of it. But should denying such a thing become a crime?
They want to put you in jail for 2 years for this, and define define residential school denialism. Like I said before, I said that the bodies haven't shown up for what were supposed to be mass graves.
That's denialism.
Yes.
Is that denialism right there?
You know what? It sounds to me as if, like in Israel, anti-Zionism is supposed to be anti-Semitism, despite the fact that there's probably 1 million Jews who are anti-Zionist. Are they also anti-Semitic? That's the kind of thing I'm talking about here. I don't know. I can't see you. Are you still there?
I'm here. Yeah.
Okay. So this is scary. This is an authoritarian thing. It says we know that the earth is flat. And if you deny that the earth is flat, you're going to go into jail, basically. Galileo denied.
Say Copernicus and Galileo suffered house arrest for that, didn't they?
Well, as a matter of fact, they were going to burn Galileo at the stake. They gave him the option: you want to live or do you want to die? If you want to live, you have to deny. You have to deny that the Ptolemean system or the heliocentric system is real. The church took the attitude that Ptolemean system of the universe was the truth, and the heliocentric one was counter the church's position. Therefore, it was a sin, and so he had to pretend that he didn't believe that anymore. And then they put him under house arrest for 10 years.
Yeah.
To deny the residential school thing is a matter of opinion. Just about everybody sees the evidence and understand that the residential school system was bad. It was something employed by the United States, Canada, and Australia for their indigenous peoples. It was a big mistake. It was an attempt to modernize the native populations. It was just a big, bad mistake. There was separating children from their parents and all other kinds of things. You can deny that happened. Okay, you can. You can say it didn't happen for whatever reason. But to put you in jail for 2 years to say that was your opinion, that it didn't happen, this is gross authoritarian type of an edict. This is the opinion you must have. If you don't have this opinion, you're going to go to jail.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
Yep, I know.
This is
very
brutal.
disturbing.
And this comes from an NDP. And that belies the fact that the NDP is looking for freedom. Free press and free speech is a hallmark of our democracy. But when you go around and say, yes, you can have free speech, but this is the opinion you must have. You must have this opinion. If you do not have this opinion, you're going to go into jail. If you go around and denying the fact that there's was a residential school problem, then you're going to go to jail for 2 years because you must be a hateful person. You must be part of a hate group.
Yeah.
This is very dangerous. This is a very, very dangerous situation here. That anybody even entertains such a thing is dangerous.
Yeah. I think we're going to have to call it quits at this point, Dave.
Yes. Without further ado, I bid you adieu. Pray for peace, everyone. Lebanon's in bad shape right now, and there's going to be missiles raining back and forth. I'm chilled by what the Israelis are going to do on their counterattack. It's revenge after revenge, and revenge when there's an eye for an eye that leaves the world blind, basically.
Yeah.
And I don't see any end in sight. And the United States right now, in the United States should be someone trying to facilitate peace, and they are not doing it, despite what they're saying. They're hand in hand with Israel and in its bloodthirsty revenge mode, and it has to stop. Human beings are not being considered at all in all this.
Yeah.
Anyway, without further ado, I bid you do pray for peace.